Hello, everybody. Welcome to session number 3 in our Dabble Writing Craft workshop series. Today, we're going to talk about protagonist. I want to take a moment to welcome everybody in the chat. Hello, everybody. It's so good to see you all here with us today. I am at a different location. I'm at my daughter's house in Texas. So my setup is different, and please give me some grace today and bear with me because I don't have my normal desktop set up with multiple monitors, and it's a whole lot easier to manage all the things on a live screen when I can see them all. But I'm on just my laptop, and I have one screen, and so it may be a little clunky for me. And thank you all so much for extending me some grace. So thank you for that before we get started. We're going to talk about protagonist today. So let's get into it. Also, in DabbleU, at the let me see if I can get the link for you and post it in the chat here. Whoops, where'd I go? And I posted if I could get these pop-ups to stop coming in. Okay, at the link there, which is for the in DabbleU, it's the event link for this. There's a link in the description where you can download a copy of these slides and a workbook that I put together to help you kind of work on this in your own time. But let's jump into it. Protagonists that readers root for. Here's a pop quiz. Think about the last book that you could not put down. The one you read past midnight, the one that made you skip lunch the next day so you could finish it on your break. Now answer this. Do you remember the plot of that book, or do you remember the people? Be honest. Most of us could not reconstruct the plot if our life depended on it. We couldn't tell you the order that the clues arrived in, or how exactly the case got solved, or what the third act reversal actually was. But we could tell you about the people in a heartbeat. If you're like most readers, you remember the people. You remember the woman who couldn't stop lying. You remember the kid who finally stood up to his father. You remember the detective who drank too much and called his sister anyway. Plot is the road. Character is who you're in the car with. And here's the truth about reading. Nobody finishes a book because the road is interesting. They finish because they care who's driving. You'll forgive a slow chapter, a coincidence, even a plot hole you could drive a truck through if you love the person you're reading about. And you will close a flawless, tightly plotted book at page 40 if you don't care whether the main character lives or dies. So this hour is about the person in the driver's seat. Today, we're going to talk about how to build a protagonist a reader will follow anywhere. Not love, not approve of, follow. By the end of this hour, you'll have a working tool you can run on any character you've ever invented, and you'll know exactly why some of your characters work and some of them don't. I want to warn you up front, this is a working session, not a lecture. There's a pen and paper exercise about 40 minutes in, and I want you to actually do it, not just watch me talk. Have something to write with, a notebook, the back of an envelope, a blank document, whatever you got. Or your ideas notebook and Dabble. Let's get to work. What a protagonist actually is. Before we get to the craft, let's clear up a definition, because new writers use 4 different words for the same thing, and it gets confusing fast. And when your words are fuzzy, your thinking is fuzzy, and a fuzzy protagonist is the #1 reason a promising draft falls apart in the middle. Main character, point of view character, protagonist, hero. These words get tossed around like they all mean the same person, but they don't. Most of the time they land on the same person, and you can get away with the blur. But the times they come apart are exactly the times you most need to know the difference. Definitions that matter. Here's how I use them and how I would encourage you to use them too. Point of view character is who the reader is looking through. They're the camera. In first person, it's the narrator. In close third, it's whose ever shoulder the camera is sitting on in this chapter. The POV character controls what the reader can and cannot see. That's all it means. It's a technical position, not a moral one. The main character is who the story is mostly about. Most of the time, this is the same person as the point of view character, but not always. Think of Sherlock Holmes. The point of view character is Watson. We're looking through Watson's eyes the whole time. But the main character, the person the story is about, the person we're fascinated by, is Sherlock. Watson holds the camera. Sherlock is what the camera can't stop pointing at. The Great Gatsby works the same way. Nick Carraway narrates, but the book is not about Nick. Protagonist is the character whose change drives the story, whose arc the story is about, whose decision at the climax is the climax. They might also be the main character and the POV character. Usually they are, but the role is specific. The protagonist is the one carrying the engine of the story inside them. Y'all excuse me while I sip my drink. My throat's a little iffy. The protagonist owns the central conflict. Hero is something else entirely. Hero is a tone, a genre word. Some protagonists are heroes. Some are anti-heroes. Some are outright villains telling their own story. It doesn't matter for craft purposes. Whether your protagonist wears a white hat has nothing to do with whether the protagonist function is working. So set that word aside for the hour. It'll only get in our way. Here's the test, and I want you to actually hold your own book up against it. Whoever has the most to lose at the climax is your protagonist. Whoever changes the most across the 400 pages is your protagonist. Whoever the book is asking the reader to invest in emotionally is your protagonist. Now, why does this matter on a Monday afternoon when you're just trying to finish a chapter? Because sometimes new writers think they're writing about character A, and the book is really about character B. You built your whole outline around the sheriff, but every time the wife walks on stage, the scene comes alive, and every scene that's only the sheriff feels like homework. That's the book telling you something. If you can't finish your draft, sometimes the answer isn't discipline, it's that you're standing behind the wrong person. You're pointing the camera at someone who is not carrying the story. I've seen writers get a stalled manuscript moving again in an afternoon just by asking that one question. Who has the most to lose here? Sometimes the answer is not who you thought when you started. Worth checking before you write another word. The 3 pillars. Now, the working tool. This is the heart of the hour, so settle in. Every protagonist who works has 3 things, just 3. If any one of them is missing, the character feels flat, no matter how much backstory you've piled up. I've read chapter Bibles 40 pages long, hair color, zodiac sign, childhood pets, attached to a character who was still dead on the page because the 40 pages did not include the 3 things that actually matter. The 3 pillars are desire, wound, and lie. Let's take each one slowly because getting these right is most of the battle. Pillar 1, desire. Your protagonist wants something, not in the abstract, specifically, concretely. A thing they would tell a friend over coffee in one plain sentence. Wanting something is not the same as needing something. We'll get to that in a few minutes. And it's a bigger deal than it sounds. For now, want is what the character's pursuing on the surface of the story: the job, the girl, the promotion, the answer, the escape, the revenge. The want is the thing the character would say out loud if you asked them what they're after. If your protagonist doesn't want anything, your story doesn't have a plot. I want to say that again because writers nod at it and then go write a passive character anyway. The plot is not events happening near your character. The plot is your character pursuing the want against obstacles and paying for it. No want, no pursuit, no story, just weather. And the want has to be specific enough to fail at. Don't write, "she wanted to be happy." That's vapor. You can't dramatize it. You can't obstruct it. You can't tell when she's won. Right? "She wanted to make it through Thanksgiving dinner without her mother bringing up the divorce." That's specific. That's real. That's achievable. Knowable the second it happens or doesn't. The moment the want gets concrete, the scene almost writes itself, because now there's a table, there's a mother, there's a bottle of wine, and a question that's about to get asked. A quick gut check you can use forever. If you can't picture the exact moment your character gets the thing they want, the want is too vague. Fix that first. Slide number 2, the wound. Pillar number 2, excuse me. The thing that happened to your protagonist before page 1 that they're still carrying, the reason they are who they are when we meet them. Wounds are not always trauma in the big, dramatic movie of the week sense. Sometimes the wound is a divorce. Sometimes it's a dead parent. Sometimes it's a failure they never got over, a business that folded, a book that got rejected 30 times. Sometimes it's a friendship that ended badly and was never repaired. And sometimes the most powerful kind is a single sentence somebody said to them when they were 9 years old that they have never once repeated to another living soul. The wound matters because it shapes how the character sees the world. This is the part writers miss. The wound isn't backstory you dump in chapter 1. It's a lens the character is wearing in every scene. Two people walk into the same room. One was raised in a house full of love. One was raised by a father who came home angry. They walk into the identical room and they see two different rooms. One sees a party. One counts the exits. They notice different things. They fear different things. They make different choices standing on the same carpet. That's the wound doing its work, quietly, underneath everything. Your reader doesn't need to know the wound on page 1. In fact, usually they should not. Maybe they learned it in chapter 12. Maybe they only see the shadow of it and never get the whole story. That's fine. That can be better. But you have to know it. You, the writer at your desk. The wound is the engine running underneath every decision that the character makes. And you can't drive a car whose engine you've never looked at. Pillar number 3, the lie. This is the one new writers miss most often, and it's the most powerful of the 3. If you take one thing home from this hour, take this one. Because of the wound, your protagonist believes something about the world that is not true. It's not a small thing, a load-bearing thing. They believe love always leaves. They believe their worth is only their work. They believe weakness gets you killed. They believe trust is for fools and the only person you can count on is yourself. The wound taught them this lie. And at some point, it may even have been useful. The lie kept them safe once. That's why they hold on to it. The lie is what the character believes on page one. The truth is what they need to learn by the end. And here's the sentence I want you to write on a sticky note and put on your monitor. The arc of the book is the gap between the lie and the truth. That gap and the character's slow, resisting, painful journey across it, that's your character arc. That's not decoration on top of the plot. That is the story underneath the plot. If you don't know your character's lie, you don't have a character arc. You have a string of events. Things happen, and then more things happen, and the character ends the book the same person who started it. And the reader closes the cover and can't say why it felt hollow. It felt hollow because nobody changed, and nobody changed because there was no lie to let go of. Let me put the three together so you can feel how little you actually need. Wound. Her father walked out when she was 8, and nobody ever explained why. The lie is people always leave, so don't let anyone get close enough to do it again. The truth is some people stay, and the closing them out, that was leaving all along. She was doing to everyone what she was afraid they'd do to her. That's a character. 3 sentences and a fourth for the truth. We don't need her hair color, her birthday, or the name of her first dog. We know who she is. We know how she'll flinch. We know what scene will break her open from 3 sentences. Want versus need. The gap is the arc. Now let's talk about something most writers know in their gut, but have never gotten articulated. Once you can name it, you can build it on purpose. The difference between what your character wants and what they need. The want is external. It's the visible goal. The thing they're chasing across the plot. We already covered it. The job, the girl, the answer, the revenge. The need is internal. It's what would actually heal them. What the lie has been hiding from them this whole time. What the wound has kept them from reaching. The need is almost always some version of letting go of the lie and taking hold of the truth. The want lives in the plot. The need lives in the soul. Here's the trick. And this is the engine of every arc worth writing. The want and the need are usually in tension. Sometimes they're in open conflict. The character is dead certain the want will make them whole. It won't. It can't. The need will. And the whole story is the slow, stubborn discovery of that difference, usually against the character's will, because letting go of the lie feels like dying to them. Okay. Let me give you 3 and watch the pattern. The detective wants to solve the case. That's the plot. That's the thing he'd tell you at the bar. But what he needs is to forgive himself for the case he didn't solve 15 years ago, the one where the girl died on his watch. The current case is just the door. The room behind it is the old one. The young woman wants to win the talent competition. That's the want. That's the whole third act, what the whole third act builds toward. But what she needs is to stop performing for the approval of a father who is never in the audience and never will be. She thinks the trophy will finally make him see her. It won't. He's not coming. The need is learning to sing for herself. And then the widower wants to find his missing daughter. Nothing more urgent, nothing more sympathetic. But what he needs underneath it is to learn how to be a present father to the daughter who's still alive, the one sitting at his kitchen table right now, watching him pour everything into the search for her sister. The want is desperate and real. The need is quieter and harder. Notice the pattern in all three. The want is the plot. The need is the theme. You want to know what your book is about in the deep sense? Look at the need. That's your theme, and you didn't have to force it. It grew right out of the character. And notice this too. The protagonist usually has to fail at the want, at least partway, to discover the need. Or they get the want, but only after they've let go of the lie that made them want it so badly in the first place. The failure isn't a detour from the arc. The failure is the arc. Now, there are four main ways this can land at the end of the book, and I want you to choose yours on purpose instead of stumbling into it. One, they get the want and the need. They win the thing and they heal. The classic satisfying arc. This is most commercial fiction, and there's nothing wrong with it. Done well, it's deeply satisfying because the character earned both. And there's a reason that it's a popular arc. Two, they get the want, but not the need. It ends up as a hollow victory. They win the case, get the promotion, marry the person, and they're just as broken as before. Maybe more, because now they've got the thing and it didn't fix them. Literary fiction loves this one. So does tragedy that wears a suit. Three, they get the need, but not the want. This is the bittersweet arc. They don't win. They lose the case, lose the competition, don't get the person, but they change. They let go of the lie. They become someone who could be happy standing in the ruins of the thing they wanted. The world didn't give them the prize, but they got their soul back. This one wrecks readers in the best way. Four, they get neither. The tragedy, full stop. The character refuses to confront the lie, clings to it right to the end, and it costs them absolutely everything. They want the want and the need both. Done with clarity, this is devastating and unforgettable. Think of the character who could have been saved by one honest sentence and never says it. Any of the four can work. None of them are accidents. You choose, and you should choose early because the editing you're walking toward changes how you write chapter one. All right. We've got the skeleton, desire, wound, lie, want, need, arc. That's the engine, and the engine is everything. But here's the catch. The engine is invisible to the reader. Nobody reads your character Bible. What the reader actually sees is the surface of the character, moment to moment on the page. And the surface has to be specific, or the reader never gets close enough to the engine to feel it turn. Specificity is what makes a character feel real. Vagueness is what makes them feel like a placeholder, a name with a job attached. And the thing is, specific is not the same as detailed. You can write 3 pages describing a character and still leave them a blur. One right detail beats 100 generic ones. Here are 3 small ways to make a character feel real fast. You can drop any of these into a first chapter and the reader leans in without knowing why. Number 1, a pet, or the pointed absence of one. A character with a one-eyed cat named Eleanor tells you something before the cat does anything. A character who won't have a dog in the house because his grandmother kept 3 of them and he hated that house. That tells you more. The animal is never really about the animal. Number two, a specific possession, not a sword, a grandfather's pocket knife with a chip in the blade from the time he pried a paint can he shouldn't have. Not a car, a 1998 Camry that smells like spilled coffee and the pine air freshener her mom always bought at the same gas station. Generic objects are furniture. Specific objects carry history, and history is character. Three, a small contradiction. The hard-nosed homicide cop who knits sweaters for his nieces and gets defensive if you mention it. The philosophy professor who watches the trashiest reality television every Tuesday night and has told no one, not even his wife. Contradictions make people feel like people because real people are walking contradictions. A character who is exactly one thing all the way through is a type, not a person. Beyond the three small things, two bigger pieces of specificity matter, and most new writers skip both. Bodies. Your character has a body, and I don't mean a description. I don't care about their cheekbones. I mean a body that does things. The way they sit in a chair, forward or slumped, whether they hold eye contact or slide off it, whether they go still when they're scared or can't stop moving, whether they're tall enough to duck out of habit in old houses. The body shows up in the writing because the body shows up in the world, and a character who never has a physical reaction to anything is a talking head floating in a white room. Voice. Your character talks like someone specific. Their sentences run a certain length. There are words they reach for that nobody else in the book would use, and words they'd never say. The nervous character who over-explains. The wounded one who answers every question with the fewest possible words. When your dialogue is working, you can cover the tags and still know who's talking. That's the goal. Voice is half of who a character is, and it costs you nothing but attention. Let's kill a common piece of advice that has done real damage to new writers. You've heard it. You may have been given it in a workshop by someone who meant well. The device is your protagonist has to be likable. Make them likable or the reader won't follow them. No, that's wrong. And it's the kind of wrong that sands all the edges off your characters until they're nice and boring. Your protagonist does not have to be likable. Your protagonist has to be compelling. Those are completely different words, and confusing them will flatten your best characters. Walter White is not likable. Scarlett O'Hara is not likable. Elizabeth Salander is not likable. Holden Caulfield is definitely not likable. And half the readers who love him wouldn't want to sit next to him on a bus. Humbert Humbert is a monster. Tom Ripley is a stone sociopath. And readers cannot put a single one of those books down, not despite the darkness, often because of it. So if it's not likability, what is it? What actually makes a reader lean in and root for a character, even a bad one? Because there's a mechanism here, and once you see it, you can build it. Three tools. You need at least one. Two is better. Three is gold. One, competence. We root for people who are good at what they do. There's a deep, almost helpless pleasure in watching mastery. The thief who reads a lock like a paragraph. The surgeon who knows the right move while everyone else panics. The con artist 3 steps ahead of the mark. Competence buys an enormous amount of patience from a reader. Will follow a cold, unpleasant character a long way just to watch them be brilliant. 2, kindness, not sweetness, not softness, a single moment of unexpected kindness, especially from a hard character, will buy you 100 pages of reader trust. The hitman who stops to feed the stray cat behind the diner, the bitter old woman who has nothing good to say about her own daughter, but is unfailingly gentle with the frightened kid next door. One true moment of mercy, and the reader decides there's a person worth watching in there. 3, vulnerability. We root for people we're allowed to see the inside of. The fear underneath the anger, the grief underneath the rage, the scared kid still living inside the hard cop. Let the armor slip just once, just for the reader and no one else in the scene, and show us the soft place underneath it. Do that, and the reader will follow your character straight into the dark. Pick one to build your character around, just one to start. The other 2 tend to sneak in on their own once the first is in place. But you need at least one of these 3 working in the first act. The reader has no handhold, and a reader with no handhold quietly closes the book. One more pillar before we build one together. Make them move. The most common note an editor gives a new novelist, the one that shows up over and over, is this: your protagonist is passive. They're reacting to things instead of doing things. The world is happening to them, and they're just absorbing it. They're not happening to the world. Passive protagonists are the quiet death of a novel. And here's the cruel part: it can happen even when you've done everything else right. The wound is clear, the lie is sharp, and the specificity is gorgeous. The voice sings, and the book still feels like it's underwater because the character is being carried through the plot like luggage. They get kidnapped, rescued, informed, summoned, warned. Things are done to them for 400 pages, and the reader, who can't say why, checks out. The fix is decision. Your protagonist has to make choices, real choices, with real cost that they have to live with. A choice with no cost isn't a choice, it's a preference. The choices that build character are the ones where both roads hurt. So look at your scenes one at a time and ask a brutal little question of each. Did the character decide something here? Did the character do something they could just as easily have not done? Did the scene change because of a choice they made? Or would it have played out the same if they'd have stayed home? If the honest answer is that nothing turned on their will, the scene is probably weak, no matter how nice the sentences are. And I know the objection because I've made it myself. Sometimes the world really is dropping bombs on your character, and there's nothing they can do about it. Fair. But even when you have agency to give them, if you look for it, they don't choose the bomb. They choose how they react to it. They choose what to do with the terrible thing they've just learned. They choose whether to tell the person they love or carry it alone in the dark. The event is out of their hands. The response never is. That's where you hide the agency and the hardest scenes. Make them choose. Make the choices cost something. Then watch the reader lean in, because now they're not watching weather happen to a stranger. They're watching a person decide who they're going to be. Now, let me show you the tool actually working, because the tool you've only heard described is a tool you'll forget by dinner. Let's build a protagonist together from nothing, right here in about 4 minutes, using only the pieces we've covered. Watch how fast a real person shows up. Um, and I've done this ahead of time, but we'll go through it. Um, we'll start with almost nothing. A man, we'll call him Ray. He runs a small hardware store in a town the highway bypassed 20 years ago. That's it. That's all I've got. Right now, Ray is not a character. He's an occupation and a name. Let's fix it. Start with the want, because the want is the door. What does Ray want specifically? The thing he'd say out loud over coffee, not to be respected. That's vapor. Let's make it concrete. Ray wants to keep the store open through the end of the year because a regional chain just opened out by the interstate, and he's watching his last customers drift out there for cheaper paint. There. Now there's a plot forming already. A man, a store, a clock, and a threat. You can see scenes start to unfold. Now the wound. Something before page 1 that made him who he is. Let's say Ray inherited the store from his father, and his father spent 30 years telling him that he didn't have the spine to run it. The old man died still saying it. That's the wound. It's not dramatic. Nobody bled, but it's been running quietly under Ray's whole life. Now watch the lie fall right out of the wound, because that's how it works. Because of the wound, Ray believes something that isn't true. He believes that asking for help is proof that his father was right. That the second he leans on somebody, on anybody, he's confirmed it. He really is the weak one who couldn't hack it alone. So Ray won't ask, won't take the loan his friend offers, won't let his daughter help with the books, won't tell his wife how bad it really is. He'd rather go down with the ship alone than be caught needing a hand. Feel how much story that lie just generated? Every scene can turn on him refusing help if he desperately needs. And now the truth. The thing on the far side of the lie. Ray needs to learn that leaning on people isn't weakness. It's the thing his father never had the courage to do. It's the only thing that could actually save the store and him with it. His father wasn't strong. His father was just alone and called it strength. 4 sentences: the want, the wound, the lie, the truth. And Ray's not a hardware store owner anymore. He's a man I could write a novel about starting tonight, but because I know exactly how he'll fail and exactly what will break him open. Now let's make him specific in one stroke. Give Ray a contradiction. This proud, closed-off man keeps a jar by the register and quietly covers the distance when a kid comes up short for something. Nobody knows. He'd be embarrassed if they did. That's kindness and vulnerability and contradiction, all in one detail. And now you like him, even though he's about to frustrate the daylights out of you for 300 pages. That's the whole tool, start to finish, on a stranger, in 4 minutes. In a little while, you're going to do exactly that kind of character on your own. Okay. Where protagonists go wrong. Before I turn you loose on the exercise, let me name the 4 ways I most often see a protagonist break so you can catch yours before an editor does. These are the usual suspects. When a character isn't working, it's almost always one of these 4. The first is the perfect protagonist. They're competent, kind, brave, right about everything, and boring as a beige wall. No lie means no arc, and no flaw means no tension. If your hero has nothing to learn and no wrong belief to shed, the reader has nothing to root for them to overcome. Give them a lie. Give them a blind spot. Perfect people are exhausting on the page, same as in life. The second is the protagonist who wants nothing. We covered it, but it's worth saying twice because it hides so well. A character with a rich inner life and no active want will drift, and the book drifts with them. Beautiful sentences, no forward motion. If you can't say what your protagonist is chasing in this chapter, that's the leak. The third is the arc that resolves too easily. The wound was deep and the lie was 30 years old, and then a single good conversation in chapter 20 fixes all of it. Readers won't buy a cheap healing. The truth should cost the character something to reach. If letting go of the lie doesn't hurt, then it did not happen. The fourth is the change that comes from outside instead of inside. The character doesn't choose to grow. Something happens to them and they came out the other side different, having decided nothing. The reader can feel the change was handed over instead of earned. A character rescued into growth hasn't lived an arc. The reader needs to see the protagonist decide in a moment where the old lie and the new truth are both on the table to reach for the truth. That decision, made under pressure and at a cost, is the payoff the whole book was building toward. Don't hand it to them, make them earn it. Keep these four in the corner of your eye while you write. Most of the time, a character who feels flat is guilty of one of them. All right. Here's a quick diagnostic to run right before the exercise, and honestly, to keep for the rest of your writing life. Like I said, I posted a link where you can download these slides from DabbleU and keep this for as long as you need it, and also a workbook that goes along that goes through some of these exercises. 5 questions you can run on any protagonist you've ever written or ever will. When a character feels off and you can't say why, run these 5 and the leak usually shows itself. Question 1. What does your protagonist want specifically? If you can't answer in one plain sentence, you have a problem, and it's the first thing to fix. Question 2. What happened to them before page 1 that shaped who they are now? That's the wound. Name it out loud. If it's fuzzy to you, it's invisible to the reader. Question 3. What do they believe about the world that is not true? That's your lie. If you can't name the lie, you don't have an arc yet. You have events. Question 4. What do they need that they don't yet know they need? The truth waiting on the other side of the lie. This is your theme, hiding in plain sight. And in question 5, your final one, in the last scene you wrote, did your protagonist make a choice that mattered, one they had to live with? If the answer is no, that scene needs another pass. 5 questions, write them on a card, run them on every major character in your book, not just the protagonist, and watch how fast the weak ones show themselves. Now let's put them to work on your own character. All right, 10 minutes. This is the part that actually changes your writing. So please don't just watch. I'm going to put a 10-minute timer on the screen. Pen down on paper or fingers on keys. I'll have some gentle background music playing for you. I'll put the instructions on the screen so you can follow along. Take your protagonist. If you have a draft going, use that protagonist. The one you're stuck on is even better. You don't have a draft, pick a character you've been carrying around in your head, the one who won't leave you alone. On a piece of paper, write 4 sentences, just 4. One sentence on what they want, the external, specific, knowable thing they're pursuing. Remember Ray in the store. Concrete enough that you could picture the exact moment they get it. 2, One sentence on their wound, the thing that happened before the story started that they're still carrying. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It has to be true. 3, one sentence on their lie, what they believe about the world because of that wound that is not true. This is the hard one. Sit with it. It's worth the extra minute. 4, one sentence on the truth they need to learn by the end of the book, the thing waiting on the other side of the lie. 4 sentences, that's your character core, and it's more useful than any 40-page character sheet you'll ever fill out. And then, if you finish early, add 3 specific details: the pet, the possession, the contradiction, anything that pins this person to the physical world. All right, I'm gonna paste these 4 questions into the chat so that you can refer to it, and I will start the timer. Okay, everybody. Let me get the right thing up on screen. All right, pins down. Come on back in. Here's the fun part. I want you to drop one sentence in the chat. I know, I know that 10-minute writing session goes by fast, doesn't it? Okay. I want you to drop one sentence in the chat. Not your whole character. I just want their lie. Just what your protagonist believes that is not true. Go ahead, put it in the chat now, and I'll read some out loud. We'll come back and read some of those in a minute if you guys want to share some. I wanted to do a demo in Dabble of the character profiles and how you can link those in the plot grid so that when you're in your plot grid reading your notes, you can click over and read your character profiles. But I will post in DabbleU some demos of that, and we'll go into that a little more deeply. Angel Wilson says her lie, she thinks, let me pop this on screen. She thinks she can protect herself and others by love and light approaches. I love that. I love that. Rob says Jennifer believes her mother died when she was 5. Ooh, that's a provocative sentence, Rob. I like that. Alicia says she's not good enough to be a mother. Classic. And Shannon, he doesn't deserve to sit at the round table. Love it. Let's see. Rua Ranui. The lie has to be smarter than everyone else to overcompensate for her physical disability. Love it. Love it. Writer Obsession says she will always be a homeless teenager with the system against her. Love it. Elise Jane Ever says they are too damaged and unworthy of the help they need to protect their family. Excellent. Oh, these are so good, everybody. I'm sorry, the font is so small on my monitor. I'm having to squint to see it. So, please forgive me there. Beck believes he doesn't deserve to sit on the round table. Love it. Lie, her sisters blame her for her mother's death and she blames herself. Oh, that's a powerful one. Her failures are directly responsible for any mistreatment or neglect of her sisters. Really, really powerful lies, you guys. You do excellent. Well done. Very well done. The building blocks of some great characters in there. As I was saying, I'll do a demo over in DabbleU and show you guys how you can use the character profiles and in conjunction with the plot grid, especially. So we'll carry on some conversation. Chris says, amazing how many of us have main characters who believe they're unworthy of their want and need. And Rob said a lot of mommy issues. Lots of great books have been built around mommy issues. Don't turn your nose up to it, Rob. Oh man. Let's see. So we will, yeah. So one last thing before we go. This is the part I want you to remember. There's a moment that happens to every novelist somewhere in the middle of a draft. The moment when the character you invented stops being the character you invented and starts being a person. They make a decision you did not plan on. They say a line you never wrote, and you look at it on the screen and you don't remember typing it. You sit there at the keyboard and the character tells you what they want to do next, and you realize you're just taking dictation. It'll feel strange the first time, like the room got a little bigger or a little more crowded. You might wonder if you're losing your mind, You aren't. A character who has started making her own decisions is the surest sign the work is alive. And here's what I want you to hold on to: that moment doesn't happen because of the 40-page backstory document. It happens because of the desire, the wound, and the lie. Once those three are clear and true, the character has enough weight to stand up and walk on their own. Your job stops being invention and starts being attention. Let them down on the page, get out of the way, and pay attention to what they do. Next workshop, we're going to build the person who stands on the other side of the table, the antagonist, because a protagonist is only as strong as what opposes them. Until then, go write your protagonist, give them a want, a wound, and a lie. Let them surprise you. I'll see you guys next time.